Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for the NAGSSR, also known as the Lucky Bag. The idea is that, for a bit of paid quartz, you can get a guaranteed 5-star and a 4-star from a pool of limited servants. The 5 stars are all limited, the 4 stars aren't. This time around, they're divided by class and time period. For all normal classes, the split is between an old banner and a new banner. For the extra classes, you get 6 total banners. I've picked out the 10 best banners of the bunch, assuming you don't have any of the servants in question. There's usually a standout servant that serves as a banner's main attraction, so I'll point those out, explain what they do, and identify the others as near hits, neutral gets, or, God forbid, disaster pulls. Let's go. Number 10. Extra Banner 5. Our first contestant is a long shot, with the grand prize being Van Gogh, a powerful soloist who becomes an even greater threat when paired with another copy of herself in duo runs. With a combination of vicious crits and stunlock potential, she's a great option to have in your toolbox. One that zeroes out bosses who lack debuff immunity or cleanse effects. The catch is that the rest of this banner isn't nearly as powerful. King Protea and Yang Guifei are alright, less so Yang and NP1, but I suppose both are growers of a sort. The catch is that you have to worry about a pair of booby prizes in the form of Voyager and Summer Abigail, who aren't terribly effective in general and they're almost dead weight in NP1. A noteworthy benefit of this particular banner is that the 4-star pool is quite good, including Estrella, Mysterious Heroine XX, and Hephaestion. Number 9. Archer Banner 1. This one features Squirturia, a ridiculously unbalanced attacker who's famous for being able to nearly single target Arts Loop even before Castoria. She's also infamous for setting me back $2 grand. But let's not get hung up on that. Your runner-up prices are pretty respectable too. Gilgamesh and Ishtar are both buster AoEs who have the potential to loop. Gilgamesh in particular boasts one of the most broad anti-buffs in the game, to the extent that it's easier to name the servants that don't take bonus damage from Enema Elish. The weak link is Moriarty, a supportive attacker who isn't too notable aside from spreading the evil alignment to your team. At number 8, we have Archer Banner 2. The main draw here is Super Orion, a self-buffing buster crit archer. When you land those Brave Chains, he absolutely melts enemies, and he can even meet some of those quote-unquote impossible damage checks under favorable conditions. You know those story fights where an enemy shows up with a huge amount of health or big damage reduction, you just have to survive for 3 turns and the fight ends? Yeah, he can end some of those prematurely. It's pretty funny, though resetting for card RNG is impossibly annoying, so buyer beware on that front. Orion is accompanied by Summer Jean, a respectable arts attacker who used to be a main farmer in that role. Her importance has diminished on NA with the introduction of the lower Econ Zenobia, and on JP she's on life support thanks to a certain Udon Gobbler getting an outrageous buff, but we'll get to her down the road. Rounding out the trio for this banner is the thoroughly lackluster Sei Shonagon, a quick archer who does a little bit of everything. Not necessarily well, but, you know, she's trying. At number 7, we have Lancer Banner 2. Melusine leads the charge on this one. I've done a pretty extensive servant guide on her, but the TLDR is that she hits hard and can transform from a single target arts to an AoE buster configuration. Both are formidable threats and make her remarkably flexible as an attacker. The skill that triggers this transformation is also a 100% battery, meaning there are a lot of creative ways to fit Melusine into multi-core teams. That's something that'll come in handy as we get more 90++ nodes. A step down on the quality spectrum is Romulus Kyranus, a respectable AoE buster lancer who has an emphasis on Roman gimmicks. He can spread the status to allies and enemies alike, which has some meme potential. The runt of the litter is Ryoma, an AoE arts lancer who gets buff removal resistance. That's good. So is a ramping NP damage buff. But his looping is inconsistent, and his bizarrely selfish kit means that the allies he needs to keep the operation going are likely to die, leaving him exposed and useless on the field by himself. Very jank, and someone you need multiple copies of to really do anything noteworthy, so Ryoma is a pretty big miss. Number 6. Castor Banner 1. The power couple here are Scotty and Merlin, both very useful supports. The former enables quick looping, while the latter used to be the driving force behind buster crit teams. Nowadays he gets more mileage as a healing/consistency engine for the Immortal team, which is valuable in and of itself. Despite this, the odds of a major hit are below 50%, which stops me from ranking this banner any higher. The other 3 gets are Prisma Ilia, Tengen Nero, and Hole Punch Da Vinci, none of whom are bad necessarily. They all have substantial batteries, and there are applications for those in team building. Though, for the record, I wouldn't pick these specific servants if given the choice. None of them have anti-buffs. At number 5, we have Extra Banner 3. This one features the powerful triple threat of Himiko, Summer Kama, and Taira no Kagekyo. Himiko is an overcharge enabler for the Immortal team, and extremely nice to have for that reason alone. She's an Exodia piece, and substitutes for Morgan in situations where firing off AoEs causes more problems than it solves. Taira no Kagekiyo is a powerful soloist. I didn't say socialist that time. And is about to get even stronger with access to Mighty Chains. She's a survival avenger, and if you know what you're doing, you can keep her alive for a while by juggling her guts and evade effects. Then we have Summer Kama, a strong AoE arts looper who fills a role similar to Space Ishtar in that configuration. We're not going to have a shortage of generalist arts loopers anytime soon, but she's quite decent in a vacuum and a notable pull nevertheless. As for the other half of this banner, Karen is okay, though she's got a bit of a learning curve to her. Summer Kiara and Ruler Moriarty are the picks I wouldn't want to see if I were pulling on a fresh account. The former has a learning curve for a new player, and neither is really worth the trouble of using at NP1. On the bright side, it is worth noting that this, along with our next contestant, has the notable 4-star pulls of Faker, XX, and Luvia. Number 4. Extra Banner 6. This one's another 50% shot at getting something really good. 3 picks stand out to me. Oberon is the no-brainer. He's a required add-on for many impure Buster servants to loop, and even outside that application, he's a critical enabler for 90++ setups. His 70% total battery and super buff combo let you meet the 2 most significant challenges of endgame farming. Multi-core teams can look pretty dysfunctional on the surface, and Oberon goes a long way towards bridging otherwise dissimilar attackers. Bazette is the second notable get. Her unique counterattack playstyle is quite a fun thing to mess around with, and you can watch enemies just destroy themselves on her. Normally you run her with Scotties for maximum firepower, but I recently got to try a Super Jank Immortal team variant where you run Bazette in place of an overcharged servant. It definitely felt like the team could fall apart at any second, but it somehow pulled through. Funny stuff against marathon fights. I recall saying in the past that Bazette isn't strictly necessary for account building and that you may want to reserve your quartz for other fights. But that assessment only applies to traditional gacha banners. Getting Bazette off a GSSR is a pretty good deal, though you want to hunt down additional copies to amplify her damage if you plan to seriously use her in high-end boss fights. The third member of the Trinity is Ashia Doman. I used to be a fair bit harsher on this guy, but his particular set of skills are surprisingly useful in multi-core team building. The Chaotic Evil buffs, the 80% battery, even the instant kill on his Noble Phantasm has been relevant for clearing bulky, low-rarity waves. He still has the usual alter ego problems, but you should be able to find situational uses for him even at NP1, though ideally you wouldn't want to lean too hard on that instant kill effect. As for the others, Super Bunyan has fast animations but not much else, and Jacques de Molay is thoroughly mediocre. Koyanskaya of Darkness is a bit harder to put in a box. I'd hesitate to put her in the main attraction category, but she checks a number of relevant boxes, like having anti-earth damage and being loop compatible. She's also got her fingers in a number of gimmicks like her animal characteristic buff and her damage over time package. A bit thinly spread for my taste, but I'd say she's a better pull than Bunyan or Molay. Now we're on to number 3, Assassin Banner 2. There are only 3 servants in this pool and 2 of them are godlike. The most important pull is Koyanskaya of Light, a key enabler for Buster looping and really just Buster stuff in general. Her cooldown reduction / battery combo is essential for a number of attackers to function effectively, including Arquade, so if you're going down that road, you'll want to fish for a copy. The other winner is Kama. On top of being an immensely powerful single-target assassin, she can give herself class advantage against alter egos. This element matters a bit less nowadays with the presence of Hephaestion, but it used to be an absolute godsend against things like the placeholder Doman Ghost, the one that acted as a door boss for one of the Arjuna altar fights. She's still generally very strong. It also helps that one of the unfortunate quirks of the assassin class is that their single-target servants have very lopsided power levels. The arts category suffers the most. Last I checked, post-upgrade Shiki Ryogi was the best option they had. Because of this, you'll see picks like Kama get used in situations where you'd normally expect an art servant instead. A 2/3 chance at greatness would normally make this banner the second best in terms of probability, but I had to dock it a rank because of that 1 in 3. That would be Semiramis, a fairly outdated AoE Buster assassin. Her only real claim to fame is that her Noble Phantasm grants buff removal resistance to your frontline. While it is technically possible to loop this, that requires a fair bit of investment and forces you to contend with her questionable damage output, especially at NP1. What a potato. In most fights that call for it, purge resistance is something you only need once, so bringing a servant who can do it on a skill is generally better anyway. Number 2. Caster Banner 2. We go back down to a 50% chance of greatness, but that coin flip includes Castoria, who's a legitimate must-roll. If you don't have her, I'd seriously consider just taking the chance and rolling the dice. She's that good, being an essential arts enabler and also an irreplaceable part of the Immortal team. What's even better is that you use your NP enough to where additional levels do make a difference, letting you hedge against drain effects while also increasing the attack buff. So rolling above NP1 is absolutely fine. You could cope with Jufu as a substitute, and she is outrageously good for a 3-star, but there's nothing quite like the real deal, which creates a bit of a problem. The way I have this top 10 set up, I'm measuring the overall quality of its banner by its chance at greatness. But then how do you weigh the fact that one servant is so disproportionately good against the probability of actually pulling them? That uncertainty is what kept this banner off the number 1 spot, and while you can make a good case for rolling on this anyway, I think you'll understand my conundrum once you see the grand winner. Besides, it helps that Castoria is getting another dedicated banner in November anyway. But before we get into that, let's cover the other pulls. The second winning role here is Miss Crane, a fairly technical but very useful buffer. Her Noble Phantasm swaps her into the backline, letting you set up an engine with other supports, K-Scope, the plug suit, or any number of other tools. She's not in the most essential tier of supports since she's not a card type enabler, but she's still a great pull that lets you add depth to the teams that you do have. Less impressive are Izumo no Okuni and Murasaki, who are both anti-demonic casters. Decent without a doubt. Attackers with batteries and anti-buffs are nothing to sneeze at. But if I pulled one of those instead of Castoria or Miss Crane, I'd be pretty disappointed. And now we come to number 1, Berserker Banner 2. There are only 3 servants here, and every one is a winner. Morgan Le Fay, Summer Musashi, and Arjuna Alter. Each one of these grows into an endgame viable attacker, and while none have the raw meta-warping power of Castoria, you're operating at a 100% chance of success, and that's not something I can ignore. Morgan is the uncontroversial pull. She's a formidable Buster Looper, an overcharge enabler for the Immortal team, and her buff package makes her useful in multi-core setups. All highly useful applications, and she does something at pretty much every stage of the game. Next is Summer Musashi, and you might be scoffing at this because we're about to get Summer Ibuki, a servant that's a far superior generalist in the same class. And that is true. For now. But you see, the Samurai Remnant event comes with a buff that not only increases her neutral damage back above Ibuki's, but also grants her anti-saber servant damage. 200% at base overcharge. Offensively, this turns her into an archer who also gets Berserker's stats, which doesn't leave a lot of room for actual archers like Summer Jean to compete, so the freaky Udon pervert is a ticking time bomb. You just have to wait out the clock. The last of our Holy Trinity is Arjuna Alter. Of the 3, I'd be the least enthused about getting him, but there's no denying that he hits like an asteroid. His damage is so high that, on the NP damage spreadsheet, he's not in the AoE section. He's surrounded by single target servants. Now this is, of course, neutral damage, and his competitors can keep pace if they meet their anti-buff conditions. Then again, Arjuna Alter works on any foe that isn't debuff immune, so he's a bit of a one-size-fits-all in combination with Koyan Light and Oberon, which not only lets him loop, but also gives him access to world-ending damage. So that's my case for Berserker Banner 2. 3 high-quality attackers, all of whom either grow or maintain their power throughout the game and into the future. Which one you ultimately pick is going to come down to risk tolerance. Meta supports might be ideal, but you've always got to worry about the odds. But with that said, let me know which banner you're rolling on and what you ultimately got. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come on to my twitch.tv/FinoTyson where I stream every week. 3 p.m. Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. This week I'll be rolling for Arquade and doing the GSSR, so if you want to see how that goes, stop by and find out. See you there.